Okay, it's 5 after 1. Looks like we had a bunch more people jump on here. So I'm going to go ahead and start the webinar. I have a lot to get through today because the workers webinar or the workers module has a lot of stuff to it. I also realized at the last webinar that switching between screens was kind of inefficient and didn't work very well. So I'm probably not going to show you many screenshots of InflatableOffice. I'll show you some pictures. You'll see some pictures in the slides that will kind of clue you into some spots. But we're not going to have time to go through the actual screenshots of InflatableOffice and show you that stuff. There's just a lot to cover. So with that said, we're going to show you how to manage your workers with InflatableOffice. I'm Tim Beck, and I also have Brandon Brown here with me. He's going to be taking any chat questions you have. So there's a chat window you can bring up and you can send in questions. I will not be watching that because I don't need you silly boys distracting me and ladies. And instead I'm going to focus on just going through the webinar. At the end of it, if Brandon couldn't answer something, I'll take a look at some of those and see if I can answer those as well. We have a Q&A session that we'll keep open at the end as well that you can send in some messages via chat, and we'll answer those. So anyway, let's get started. Oops, one too many. Okay, so what is the workers module? The workers module is an add-on module that we sell in addition to your standard InflatableOffice account. We do it as an add-on because not everybody wants it or needs it, and we were trying to reduce the price for those people who didn't, but it's quite a full-featured module. It's probably one of the most, maybe the most full-featured module that we offer. And it's designed to help you manage your employees or workers. And this is a little fun fact in how the IRS influenced the name of this module. When I originally wrote InflatableOffice was back in 2004. I started. It wasn't called that at that point. But I was using it for my rental company, and it was the second feature that I wrote, the workers module. And I was at the time trying to get the IRS to permit me to pay everybody as a contractor, and was going through that process with them. And you know, as part of that, I did not want to call them employees, and so I started using the name workers instead, and that's kind of why I did that. And the name kind of just stuck, and we never changed it. Interestingly, I wrote this around 2005. You guys might have heard of When I Work, which is a standalone software that's used for managing workers as well. And they wrote theirs in 2010. They started in 2010, so we were a little ahead of the game there. However, we're very specialized in how we do it, and it's built specifically for the event industry, and it's tied in with the rest of our product that we offer, and so it really didn't have it has a different appeal than When I Work, but a lot of similar features for both of them. So that's just some interesting history there. Why is it necessary? Well, I wrote this because I wanted my workers to manage themselves for the most part. When I started business, I was the only guy running the thing, and I wanted to grow, but I knew that I couldn't put any more time in than I was. And you guys know, you put a lot of time into running your business, and anytime you can free up some of that time, you do it. And so my decision was that workers were sucking a huge amount of my time away. The biggest time suck was were my customers and just giving them information and quoting and booking and stuff like that. And so that was the first thing I wrote to free up some time there. And after that, the next biggest issue with my time was workers and managing them. I would get calls during dinner because people forgot when they worked, and I would have to call people and try to find someone to fill shifts, and it was a pain for me. And so that's why I decided to do it, and that's why I think even today it's necessary, and we've added a lot of features to it since then, so it's even more necessary. And we'll get into some of those in a bit. But workers are key to your business. When people rent your equipment, a lot of times they're not going to see you as the business owner, they're going to see your workers. And so it's really important that you have good workers, and it's really important that they're showing up on time and doing the things that you want, especially with all the liability in this business. It's very important that they have the tools that they need to keep track of stuff and document stuff for you in case something should arise. Also the other thing that's really important about our workers module is access control. And with the workers module, we built in the ability to have multiple user logins and a lot of different permissions that you can set per user. And so that's another really important selling point and reason why people will use the workers module. So the first point I want to deal with are the two main areas of the workers module. The first one, we've kind of talked about a little bit already, is just dealing with workers in the warehouse and the field. And the second would be more of your office manager and sales reps, people that would be using the back-end system. So of these two main areas, the workers in the field and warehouse, they actually use a separate site. And you can see, I did a screenshot here of the two sites. So the one on the left, which is kind of hard to see because of the white background, is the worker site. And it's a mobile-based site that all of your workers can go to and get a lot of information and perform tasks that you need them to do. And then your office managers and sales reps, they will tend to use the back end, which is the same part that you as an owner spend a lot of time in. So let's go through some scheduling of workers because that's an important part, especially. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of start with the office, warehouse, and field managers, and we're going to start with them, and then we'll move into some points that deal more with the office people and access control and stuff like that. So scheduling workers. There's two ways to schedule. You can do it from the lead or the delivery tool. And the feature that I was most interested in when I wrote this, and surprisingly, I think that it's really underutilized, is the self-scheduling of workers. So when you're scheduling workers, there's one of the important things that's going to pop out right away is positions. Every time you put a scheduled shift on the books, it wants you to put a position in. And we have positions primarily for determining pay rates of workers and to match abilities of workers with what you need done. So if you're going to make a position for someone who can manage the rock climbing wall, you want to make sure that someone who can't doesn't sign up for it or somehow get put onto it. So that's one of the ways that positions will help you. Additionally, positions do some things for pay rates. So if you want to pay the rock wall people a certain amount, you can set it on the position instead of the person. We actually go even further. We allow you to set a pay rate per position per worker, so the combination of the two. So the system is very flexible on setting pay rates. So there's a schedule tab on each lead. I don't know if you've noticed that before, but there's a schedule tab on each lead, and that schedule tab will let you add shifts. It'll kind of guess at what it thinks the best date and time for the start and end of the shift is, and you then can change that. You can also put the position that you want there, and you can determine a meeting location, which that's for instance, if you wanted them to meet at the warehouse or go directly to the event, that information is given to them in the form of an address so that they can route themselves there. Now, one of the things that you can do with scheduling from the lead tab is you can leave that position unfilled. So if you're not certain yet who you want to put in there, you can leave that unfilled. It'll show up on the workers section of the overview as an unscheduled shift, It kind of alerts you to what shifts are not yet scheduled if you look on that. If you're allowing your workers to sign up for stuff themselves, because you've not filled that spot, that will be open for your workers to sign up for it. And if you know who you want to put there, or you have an idea, you can always fill that in as well. So same sort of thing from the delivery section, and that's the picture that we have here on the side. One of the big differences between scheduling from the delivery area and the lead area is that when you're scheduling from the delivery area, it's actually going to create a scheduled shift on each lead that's contained in that truck, or not necessarily that truck, but each lead that that scheduled shift overlaps in that truck. So you could have a truck that's going out and doing a bunch of deliveries in the morning, and you could schedule someone from 8 to 12, and then you could schedule someone different for the afternoon from 3 to 8 to do the pickups. And if you were to look then at the schedule tab of a lead, you would see that all those shifts are scheduled, and that's done via the delivery tool. And I think that's probably the best way to do your scheduling, because most of you, I know, are not sending one person out per lead. You're sending one person or two people to do multiple leads, whatever's in the vehicle. And so scheduling it from the delivery tool is really probably preferred. Before we had the delivery tool, the only way you could do it was on the schedule tab of the lead. But now that we have it, I would recommend using it that way. One of the things you might notice too with scheduling is if you pick a position and you click the update arrow, it'll actually show you only people that are available for that position. You'll also see in red text and with an asterisk if someone is unavailable because they're already scheduled for something else. That's kind of why the update tab is useful. So if you were to change the date and time, change the position, click the update tab, it's going to give you a little more information on those workers, and it's probably not well known, so I wanted to highlight that. If you are scheduling your people, one of the things that you can do is you can send out in your auto emails like a shift acknowledgement or a shift request to these people, and you can have links in there where they can click to accept, acknowledge, or decline the shift, and that information is then put back into the system and visible on the schedule tab, as well as the overview, I believe, in the workers area of the overview. The other thing that I really like is the worker self-scheduling. Now, if you were to put an empty slot on one of those shifts, it goes out to the worker site, and what the worker can do is, if their position matches, they can sign up for it. Now, we have this other neat little feature that we use called ranking. And ranking was a quick way for us to determine who were the best workers and make sure the best workers got first pick of the shifts that were out there. And this was something I came up with early on because I realized my good workers were maybe not as quick on the computer, and they weren't getting signed up for stuff, and they were getting frustrated, and they were going and finding other jobs, and I didn't want that to happen. So what I did was I set up a ranking system. So a rank 1 can see 2 weeks into the schedule, and they can sign up 2 weeks into the schedule. Rank 2 is 4 weeks. They can sign up 4 weeks into the schedule. Rank 3, 6 weeks, and so on, all the way up to rank 10. And we just added rank 6 through 10 recently as a suggestion from one of our customers. And rank 10 will actually be unlimited. So if you rank them in 10, they can sign up as far out into your schedule as you have shifts listed. But otherwise, what that does is it makes it so that your best workers who are higher ranked can get on at their leisure and go in and sign up for shifts. If they haven't, those shifts start to become available to people with lower ranks. And that way, by the time the event comes, you've hopefully filled all of the shifts that you need to fill. one of the other things that we have for this for scheduling and stuff is shift reminders, and I'm going to go into a little more detail with that later on in the presentation. But we do that through texting and emails as well. So, and just one more thing regarding shift scheduling. I'm sorry, self-scheduling. The way I would do it is I would get a big pool of workers, people who are interested. Some of them are interested in working all the time. Some were interested in just picking up shifts here and there. It didn't matter to me whether they had other jobs or not, because you know how this industry is. Sometimes if it's a holiday weekend or something, you're slammed and you need 50 people, whereas on a normal weekend, you might only need 20 or 25. And so I set the system up so that you could get a big pool of workers, and that they could sign in and sign up for things, and everybody would be happy working through that rank system. Now, the ranking system you have to determine, and you have to switch those ranks. So if someone starts to become a less than desirable employee, you're the one that has to take that feedback and go in there and change that rank. So let's move on here. I'm going to show you a little bit more about the worker site and how to get the most out of it. On the worker site, there's a couple of different links here. The first one that you see and you're presented with as a worker when you log in is the calendar view. Now, the calendar view is going to show you, by default, a monthly view of the schedule. On each day, there will be dots. A dot represents a shift that's available. I think we only put up one shift per lead that person is able to fill. If there's multiple shifts at the same position, we only show one of those. If there's different positions on the lead, then we show them both if they're qualified. So what we do is we try to make it easy for them to see what they can and can't sign up for. Things that are green are things that they're signed up for. Things that are red are things that they aren't signed up for. And I think we even show a different designation for shifts that are on the calendar, but they're not able to sign up for them yet. If for some reason there's a ranking issue or something like that. In certain instances too, if you're a manager or someone who needs to see more, the permissions are available to where you can set it up to show all of the shifts so that person can click through and see who's working different things. That's usually only done for people who are managing in some capacity. The other link that you'll see there next is the time clock. And the time clock was something that we added not too long ago. I don't think it's gotten very wide use yet, but the time clock is a way for you to make sure that your employees are actually showing up when they're supposed to for their shifts. So if you tell your employees, I want you to clock in and out using the time clock when you show up, it's going to mark those things. They can't change the time that they clocked in, and they can't change when they clocked out. It'll take probably a little getting used to, and they may have to put notes on there when they're clocking in and out to let you know why they were late, or why they forgot to clock out, or whatever. There's also a way for them to do breaks through the time clock feature. And what we do is we'll take all those hour totals and all that information and put it into your payroll report. And from there, you can make adjustments as needed. But it's a really good way to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do. The other thing that's neat about the time clock is we grab a geolocation when it's available. And one of the things we do is we force them before they're able to clock in or out to allow us to get that. So we do our best to get a geolocation. We are not, at this point, we don't have any way for you to access that, but we do have it. I'm guessing that soon we'll be adding maybe some maps or whatever to show where it is that they clocked in and where it is that they clocked out and stuff like that. But we don't have that just yet. But we are saving the information. Surveys is another link there. If they are a manager type, and that's something you set on the position, I think it's called reporter. And if they're a reporter type, they will see any lead that a survey hasn't been completed for like a manager report, and they will have the opportunity to complete that report. We also have Google Calendar integration. I know that you probably know that we have that for the back end, but we also have it for workers. And that's just an easy way for them to integrate um, their Google Calendar with their worker shifts so that things show up on their phone in their native phone calendar. So it's a pretty useful thing. I'm not sure how many people actually use that, but it's a nice way to view it. Once you get it to Google Calendar, you can a lot of times get it anywhere you want. And then the last point I want to make about the workers site, it is completely responsive, so it works on all sorts of mobile screens, tablets, phones, and so forth. And basically, it'll resize itself and be very usable in all those formats. And that was done intentionally because we know that the majority of the people that are going to be using this are probably going to be doing it with a mobile device. So. Communication, another major point of the workers module is communicating with your workers, making that easier for you. And so there's a few different ways that we do that. We do it through email and text reminders. You can set these up in the email center in your settings. We've had email reminders for a long time. The first texting that we did, we started doing for the workers. And then we have since extended it in small parts to customers, but that first came with the workers module. You can also set up emails that require responses. And when I say require responses, we can't really force their hand, but what we do is we track their response. So it gives them the option to respond to you, and we show you if they did respond, if they didn't respond, what they said when they responded, if they accepted or declined or acknowledged the shift that they got. Another email that we offer here is the shift changes email, and this is a special one. This one took us a little while to come up with, but it proves to be very valuable and mostly valuable for people that are using the scheduling through the delivery tool because the delivery tool will affect so many different shifts and so many different things. It was kind of hard to tell people, oh, I changed your schedule. You're now doing it this time, and because you're dragging blocks back and forth and setting up your trucks, and then every time you change that, it's going to change the schedule for the worker potentially. And so we wanted to make an easy way for you to deal with that. And so the shift changes email is that easy way. Now, if you set up all these email reminders to go to your workers, they're probably going to get annoyed with you pretty quickly and start ignoring them. The shift changes email is, if you're using that one, in most cases, you want to turn some of the other email reminders off because they'll get duplicates. But the shift changes one is really nice because it'll organize all the changes. It'll show shifts that they were removed from, shifts that they were added to, and then also any changes to shifts that they already knew about. So that's a really nice email, and you can test that out and see what you think of that, see what your workers think. But I think it's a pretty good way to do it. The other thing that we can do, and this isn't probably very widely known as well, if you do get approval from the IRS to treat your workers as independent contractors, or that's the way you decide to do it, we do have some additional tools where we will actually, through our QuickBooks integration, you can put worker bills into the QuickBooks program, and it'll put all their pay information in there and what you need to pay them, and it makes it a little easier for you to do your payroll if you're doing it through as an independent contractor. The other thing that it'll do as far as communication goes is once you've marked these shifts paid, and this email will kick and it'll send over to the workers kind of like a detailed breakout of their payroll. So it'll show them a lot of things similar to the payroll summary that we're going to get into later, where it'll show them where they worked, how many hours, what they're being paid for, as far as rentals. Like a lot of times if you're doing independent contractor pay, you're paying based on the item they took out, and so it'll show them like what they're getting per each item and stuff like that. So we're going to move now into the office workers and talk mostly about managing access of those workers and tracking their performance, which are two key points when you're dealing with office workers. So Inflatable Office in the beginning only had one login to the backend, and as we improved the workers module, we found that people were not only in the field, but they were also running stuff in the back office, and it became apparent that it would be nice to have multiple logins to the system so that people could move between the two without changing their login, and then without using the administrative login. It also became apparent that people needed to be able to have permissions set per worker, and so we built the system around the workers module, and now you can go into each worker profile, and there's a permissions tab there, and you can set permissions for all sorts of areas of the site. And sometimes you can set them to read only, and sometimes you can set them to edit, and sometimes you only have the edit option. But it does provide a lot of ability to make sure you're restricting things that they shouldn't be into, and only giving them the information that they need. Now, some of this worker stuff translates over into some of our other modules, like the CRM module. And so some of the permissions there for CRM are pretty unique in that you can, by changing the way you have the permission set, you can actually show, give them some really unique functionality with things like the task manager. But similarly, there are other areas in the software where you can do the same when it comes down to permissions. The other tab that you'll see, one of the other tabs you'll see on the worker profile is the log tab, and that's a pretty useful tab. We don't log everything the worker does, but if you want to get a quick look at what your workers are doing as they're moving through the back end and dealing with customers, if you look at the log tab, it's going to show you everything that we've logged for that worker in chronological order. There is a limit to it, but if you need us to pull more than that, we can always do that for you. But it's a good way to get a quick look to see what they're doing, when they're working, and so forth. And I know I used it to kind of keep an eye on some of my workers that I wasn't sure if they were really working as hard or fast as I thought that they should. So, and then there's also the ability to track and see your sales rep performance and track commissions. So the picture we have here shows you the commission area, and you can set it up to give us a commission to any sales reps for things that they're selling. If they're a sales rep and in a sales rep position, then they show up on the lead as an option to choose them as a sales rep. And once they're attached to that lead, they would then get commission for that if you have this set up that way. If you're not doing commissions and you just want to track performance of your sales reps, just having them on those leads, later you can look at the sales statistics in the overview, and you can filter by sales rep. And so you can see the whole company in aggregate, and then look and filter and see who's doing the most of the work, and reward people accordingly. So that's a pretty powerful feature as well. But wait, there's more. The gift that keeps giving here, the IO Workers module. I guess I got a little tired when I got to that slide. So payroll reporting is something that we didn't cover yet, but that's the picture that you see here on the right. It's a little hard to see because we had to minimize it so much, but I would say that our reporting for the payroll period is very, very detailed. So the first section you'll see is the name, and then it breaks down by each lead that the person was at, and then it breaks down by position as well. And so it'll total everything by person and position, show the individual leads. If it's a grouped shift, which is like something that was scheduled from the delivery tab, we don't do it by lead, but we do show the date and times of that shift because it covers multiple leads. We'll show you if any of the surveys were completed. You can see that manager report and customer survey. If it's crossed off, it means it's completed. If it's not, it has not been completed yet. If you've done any independent contractor stuff, you'll see the information in there as well. And we show miles, so you can actually pay based on a per mile rate, and it'll calculate that for you as well. In addition, if you're using the time clock feature and they've clocked in on a certain shift, it's going to highlight the hours, and you can click on those hours and you can adjust what they clocked in and out of. If there's a big discrepancy between the hours, you can it'll highlight that for you so that you know. If you have an overlap, so let's say you scheduled someone for 2 shifts and you actually overlap the times. They were supposed to finish at 5 p.m. from one and start at 4 p.m. on the other. Well, you wouldn't want to pay them for that hour between 4 and 5 twice. It's going to highlight that as well. You can see on the far right side there's a paid checkbox, and that's to help you keep track of whether you've already paid that person for that shift or not. I think that any unassigned time clocking shifts would show up here too. So if you're using the time clock, you can actually use it for people who are working in the office as well, and they don't have to be attached to a lead or any shift that's been scheduled. They can just be unassigned, and those will show up as well on here. And one last thing, I almost forgot, any sales commissions will also show up on this report. So it's a pretty good report to keep track of what your payroll is for the period that you've chosen. And payroll is a difficult thing to keep track of sometimes, and this just takes all the difficulty out of it. So, one of the other cool things that we had added a while ago was attachments and documentation. And this was something that I used a ton for my company. I don't know if you guys know, but if you take a picture of something with your phone or scan a document in, you can send it into an email address called attach@inflatableoffice.com. And if you put the lead ID in the subject, what we'll do is we'll attach that document to the lead, and it'll be accessible then from Inflatable Office. If you're using the workers module and the worker is scheduled on a shift and they don't put the ID of the lead in, it'll try to determine where they're at that time and actually put it on the right shift and the right lead for them. So that's a pretty neat thing. I used to have my guys take pictures of the event after they got set up, just as documentation that we did our job right. I would have them fill out paperwork, and then I'd have them take pictures of the paperwork and submit it so that we had digital copies of that so they didn't get lost or anything. And that was all just to protect us from a liability standpoint. And I think that's a really good practice to use, and a very valuable thing that the workers thing gives to you. We also have a safety and training and certification program, which we built a while ago, and I would say this one probably doesn't get a lot of use either. But what we did was we took information from other safety seminars and different things like that, and we compiled it, and we put together some content and some quizzes. And they're based, there's some general ones, and then there's some that are based specifically on certain types of units. And you can actually define in Inflatable Office what unit falls into what category for safety. And then your worker, every 9 months, will have to take any of these quizzes that correspond with a position that they're available to use that also corresponds with these types of units. So it's a good way to kind of make sure that you're keeping your guys trained. Originally, our goal was to make this something that we could get you guys insurance discounts with, and we're still working on that. We haven't seen that come through yet, but I'm hearing some good news lately. So hopefully we can get through that. Just an aside, for the safety and certification stuff, it is available to you as an owner from the back end. You can go and take that. It's also something you can set up for your customers. If you're doing pickups and you want to have people take that information and learn it, you can do that as well. So that's all available. And we have a nice report that you can generate to show your insurance company how well you comply and how many of your people are actually taking the quizzes and passing them and so forth. And then one of the last things we'll go through here is the survey that we call the manager report, and it goes out to kind of get information from the people who are doing the deliveries and the pickups to know what needs dealt with. There are a few special questions on there that do special things that people probably aren't aware of, and one of those is the questions that ask about whether any of your equipment needs maintenance. And if they put in that it does need maintenance, that will trigger an alert and send an email to the appropriate person inside of InflatableOffice to make sure that your team can make the adjustment that's needed when something needs repaired. So I know it's a lot. I'm moving pretty fast here, but we're done now. And so I just want to say, for your sanity's sake, use the workers module. There was a reason why I wrote it second, right after quoting, and it's because it saves you a ton of time to use it. And I think it gets overlooked from time to time, but if you're using as much of it as you can, it's really going to save you a ton of time with dealing with your workers. So save yourself some stress and time and be more productive. That's what we're always trying to do for you at InflatableOffice.